house prices in the UK are completely broken. And I don't just mean from the perspective that house prices are so high an entire generation is being priced out of the housing market. I mean from the reporting perspective. And the more that I've looked at these different HPIs, these different house price indices over the past 12 to 18 months, the more I've come to realise that these are a big part of the problem with what is going on with the UK housing market. So in this video, I want to dive a bit deeper into these HPIs because house prices are broken in the UK, and all the time we keep getting these indices that I don't think are a true reflection of what is actually happening at the moment. The longer the current stasis that we're seeing at the moment, the standoff we're seeing between buyers and seller, the longer that is going to continue. So a couple of days ago, we had the latest HPI from Nationwide. Now those alongside all of the other major ones, Halifax, ONS, Rightmove, they release their HPIs once every month to much fanfare in the media. Massive dramatization about prices either going up or down, usually going up as we've seen over the past kind of decade and a half. But what this has created is a generation of homeowners who genuinely believe that house prices only ever go in one direction. And we've also got a generation of buyers who feel like they've been left behind. And at the moment, the market has stalled because sellers don't want to reduce their asking price, or certainly not enough. And buyers who have been crippled by raising interest rates, so their mortgage repayments or potential mortgage repayments have gone up so much, plus general inflation has absolutely destroyed the cost of living for most people. We have this standoff. Now, buyers can't suddenly just pull money out of thin air, but sellers can reduce their price. So on the face of it, it looks like sellers are being greedy is what is causing the market to grind to a halt. However, I don't want to go too hard on sellers as I don't actually think it's their fault. So let me explain in this video. So keep in mind the backdrop to this video. I'm recording this at the end of 2023, and over the past year, so 2023 has been one of the worst years for the housing market in a long, long time. We've had crazy high inflation. We've had the hikes for the Bank of England. So we've got very high mortgage interest payments at the moment. And there's been various other economic issues. But somehow, according to these indices, house prices have barely come down. And if you guys that are watching this or anything like myself who have been following the property in the areas that you're interested in, what you're seeing at the front line seems to be very, very different to what is getting reported in these HPIs. So let me just give you some examples, and then we can talk about whether these are accurate or maybe some of the reasons why they aren't accurate. So up first, very quickly, we've got Nationwide, and in their latest HPI, they say the average price is £258,000, 557. But let's just say 258,000 is their latest price towards the end of 2023. Now, if we go back to January 2023, so the very start of the year, their average price was 258,297. So basically almost the same, within a few £100 of each other. And this is with the economic backdrop that I just talked about. Crazy high interest rates, or compared to history over the past 10, 15 years, the current interest rates are high, but obviously long-term historically, they're not high. We've also then had the big inflationary issues. We've seen people's real take-home pay be absolutely destroyed by the cost of living. I know that wages are finally just starting to take over inflation, but we're a long, long way from that catching up. So apparently, according to these guys, since January, house prices have basically gone nowhere. Okay, maybe Nationwide is just an outlier, but no, Halifax, the same thing. In their latest HPI, they've got house prices at just under 282,000. And if we go back to January, I'm sure they've got the date here somewhere. Back in January, the average price was 282,000. So both Nationwide and Halifax, two of the biggest mortgage lenders in the country, are both saying that in 2023, so far, house prices have basically gone sideways. Now, for those of you that have been checking out your local areas, I'm sure you probably don't agree with that data. Now, Nationwide and Halifax are both based on mortgage valuations, whereas Rightmove is based on asking prices. So what I've done is I pulled up the latest Rightmove, and I'm going to compare that to January. So in January, the average asking price on Rightmove was £362,000. And in November, the average asking price was £362,000. So again, the third major house price index. I know they're slightly different. Some of them are agreed prices and some of them are asking prices, but they all are roughly saying the same thing. The house prices didn't actually go down in 2023. So finally, we've got the ONS, which is supposed to be the official completed house prices. Yes, we know they lag between 5 to 7 months due to how long it takes to complete and the fact that Nationwide report 2 months later. So it's November at the moment and we've got September's data, and those would have been for sales that were agreed kind of 4 to 5 months prior to that as well. So let's see what their data says. Let's scroll down until we find the relevant section. So back in January 2023, the average house price was 286,000. And if we fast forward to the latest information from September, which was reported in November, they've got the average house price at 291,000. So according to ONS, house prices have gone up £5,000 in 2023. So when I said at the start of the video, it's easy to say that sellers are being greedy. If you put yourself in the position of a seller, if you look at all of the major HPIs, they're all pretty much saying the same thing. House prices have gone sideways in 2023, or even according to the ONS, house prices have gone up. And imagine the situation, they've invited 3 different estate agents to come out and value their properties who are going to be pushing this information on them. You know, sign up with us. House prices are absolutely fine. They haven't gone down at all in 2023. Of course, they're going to try and get the most they possibly can for their property. So one of 2 things needs to happen for this to change. Number one, the HPIs need to reflect what is really happening at the front of the housing market at the moment. So I think it's very different from what I'm seeing. Obviously, everyone's going to have different experiences based on the region they're looking at. Or number 2, those sellers need to actually go onto the market at those higher prices, as they have been doing throughout 2023, sit on the markets for a couple of months, getting no interest, and then the reality, the actual reality of what's happening in the UK housing market at the moment hits home, and they then start to reduce their prices. So I'm trying not to blame the sellers for having crazy high prices. When you look at all of the major data, why would you question this and believe some random guys on YouTube are saying things are much worse? You're going to take the chance, aren't you? You're going to go for the higher price. So either the HPIs need to reflect more accurately what is happening, or unfortunately the sellers have to go on the market for at least a few weeks or a couple of months to realize that reality is much worse than these HPIs make out. The big question is then, why do I believe that these HPIs aren't accurate? And I remember this is just on the assumption that I believe house prices have actually fallen a lot more from what I've been seeing versus what is being reported. They may be accurate and I might be completely wrong. So always keep in mind that is a possibility as well. So I don't think we're ever going to know 100% at this moment in time why they're incorrect. I think it will become clearer as the data flushes out over the next year or two. But there's a few possible scenarios. Now, I've seen people talking about the average transaction value, that the average transaction value could potentially go up in a house price crash, because if less houses are being sold but more expensive houses are being sold, then the average transaction value could go up. Now, I understand the premise of that, but apparently all of these indices should be what is called mix adjusted. So they should be taking samples of detached houses, semi-detached, terrace, flats, etc., and weighting those accordingly. So it shouldn't be the case that if there's lots of high value properties selling from a particular category, that they skew these HPIs. But I think there maybe is a certain amount of that happening. Also, all of these indices except Rightmove, funnily enough, are seasonally adjusted. And what that means is they all apply their own algorithm to try and smooth out the peaks and troughs throughout the year. So that seasonal adjustment is purely down to someone's opinion as to what they think should happen to those figures. And we've seen throughout the year, even in this latest nationwide report, we can see the monthly change they report to the public, they're saying it's a 0.2% increase, yet the actual real figures went down by the best part of £1,000. So you can see how that can be misleading as well. The other thing as well to think about, and this is coming back to the average transaction value, what I've been seeing is the few properties that I have seen sell throughout 2023, it seems to be the properties that are really, really nicely done. The properties that are offering something a bit different. Your run-of-the-mill estate properties, or the typical Rightmove property that's on there is overpriced but hasn't been decorated since the 1970s when the original owner moved in. Those type of properties are just sitting there overpriced at the moment, and they're not selling. But the more premium ones do seem to be going. So there's every chance that in the particular segments that I was talking about, such as detached, semi-detached, flats, etc. Maybe it's just the better properties are selling, so the actual average transaction for each sector is up. And that could be because labor costs, trades, etc., and materials are so high at the moment, people don't want to do renovations anymore. They don't want to buy a house for 350,000 and then spend 100 grand bringing it up to speed. They'd rather just spend 400,000 for a house that is done. So that could push that average transaction value up, but also not catch out the mix adjustment that I was just talking about. So that's something else to keep in mind. And also 3 out of 4 of these indices, you could argue for, but certainly Nationwide, Halifax and Rightmove all have a vested interest in the property market doing well. So whether they know it or not, there's probably going to be some sort of bias in their calculations, especially the seasonal adjustments they apply. You could argue that the ONS should not have any bias, but they still apply their own seasonal adjustments. And as we've seen with the ONS throughout the year, somehow they always seem to find the figure that makes things that little bit easier for the government. I'm not saying they're definitely doing anything, but I'm just saying it's something to keep in mind. Most people have a vested interest in property prices, just as I do with making this video. I would like to see property prices come down, as I think on the whole it would be of benefit to people that live in the UK. So that's why I wanted to make this video, just to talk about those HPIs. Now, if you're thinking about buying a property, sometimes the sellers won't tell you the full truth about why they're actually selling that property. So in the video that I'm going to pop up now, I'm going to show you some of the free checks that you can do to try and find out the real reason that those sellers are actually trying to get rid of that property. So I'm going to pop up that video now, and I'll see you guys over there.